Hi everyone, so it's time for another grain to glass video. Now a lot of people on my 1,000 subs suggestions thing for new videos were asking about me doing more grain to glass videos and also specifically more malty beer styles. So ask and you shall receive, people, because this video is a grain to glass for a clone of Founder's Porter. So this is a fantastic beer. If you haven't had it already, try it. I'm always banging on about Founders being a good brewery, and this one is no exception. I think this is actually one of my favourite sort of porters that anyone makes, to be honest. And I have been lucky enough to try a clone recipe of this already, which was sent to me a while back by Rusty Homebrew, so Russell at Rusty's Home Brewing, and he made a really good version of it himself, and I love that that beer. I think I put a video of me drinking it during a quite a long tasting session of lots of different beer males up on the BrewTube Facebook group, and I got quite pissed that night, but I do remember distinctly the quality of that beer. So I wanted to do it myself and see if I can get it anywhere close to the original, because if I can, it will be a spot on beer, and yeah, fingers crossed. So here it comes, Founder's Porter Brew Day. So the beer's just mashing in at the moment, which gives me a quick chance to run through the recipe before I go on to the actual brew day footage and the rest of it. So Founder's Porter is a 6.5% 45 IBU porter, so I guess that kind of puts it into sort of robust porter territory. In fact, they do use the term robust porter on the back to describe it. So robust or American porter, as that's a bit stronger than most of the sort of British porters that you would see. The recipe that I've got here, which Rusty kindly supplied me with, slightly adapted to suit my system and what I had in stock grain wise, but basically we have 4.18 kilos of Maris Otter as the base malt. We've then got 470 grams of Munich as well. There's 600 grams of chocolate malt. Now in the end I had to actually do 500 of normal chocolate malt and then 100 of pale chocolate malt, because I only had a 500 gram bag of that, but it shouldn't make too much difference. We've got 290 grams of Carapils, 180 grams of extra dark crystal, and 80 grams of black malt. So quite a lot of roasted malts in there, but this beer doesn't have any particular harshness or you know, really strong roasty flavours from that. And as I said, the clone recipe that I tried from Rusty was really good. It's fairly well hopped for a porter. Again, that's kind of typical of American versions of the style. So we've got 23 grams of Magnum to bring the bittering up. I think it was a different bittering hop that was in the original recipe, but again, that's what I've got available. Might have been Nugget or something like that. And then you've got 21 grams of crystal and Willamette at 20 minutes into the boil, and then a little bit of finishing hops at the end, so about half an ounce in total, 7 grams each of crystal and Willamette at flame out. And it will be fermented with California Ale. Well, it says White Labs on this, but I'm actually using the Imperial version of that. I do have WLP 001 on slant, but I didn't have time to culture that up into a big enough starter basically for this recipe, so I just ordered some Imperial house yeast, I think A01, and supposedly that's exactly the same strain, so the Chico strain or Sierra Nevada strain. And that's it really. So yeah, that's the recipe. Looks good to me. Let's get on with some brew footage. Right folks, so it's been in the bottle for about 7 weeks now. I've been itching to do a proper review on it. I've drunk quite a few already, to be honest, and I'm really enjoying it. Shared a few with friends, even took it to one of the local brew clubs as well and got some pretty good feedback on it, so really happy with it as a beer. But today I thought I would try and measure it up against the real deal. So if you were paying attention in the video, you will have, the footage from before, you will have seen that the final gravity came out a little bit higher than predicted, so the ABV didn't quite make it to the, what is it, 6.5% that the original is, so I think I've got 6.1 on that. It's not really that unusual for a beer with that high a mash temp to finish, obviously quite high FG, but that was slightly higher than the prediction. Other than that, no real issues. You also might have noticed that I was intending to use the California ale yeast, but got the wrong imperial yeast, so I bought A01 assuming that that would be their equivalent to WLP 001, but after I actually looked into it, I realised that it's in fact the Whitbread yeast, so it's really closer to kind of SO4. So it may have some more kind of fruity esters from the yeast than intended compared to the original, assuming that they do actually use something like California ale yeast. I mean, that's what the clone recipe says, but who knows. Anyway, let's crack on. So, clone first. I was a little bit worried with the high final gravity that I may end up with some overcarbed beer if it kicked off again in the bottle, but it doesn't seem to have done that yet. I'd be a little bit wary about leaving it in a warm shed over the summer though, so I'm glad that we're going into winter now. But as you can see in the glass, looks good, very dark, can't really see anything through that or any sort of colour, even up to the light, maybe just a hint of very dark reddy brown around the edges. And the original, so I would say maybe that one's got a hint more carbonation on it. This one was bottled on 2nd of the 5th, or if that's in the American format, that might be the 5th of the 2nd. Anyway, it's quite a bit older than one I brewed, so it's had a little bit more time to mature. Let's just have a look at the two there. So yeah, I mean, you can't really compare colour much, can you, because they're both just dark, as dark as you can get really, but there's a little bit of a difference in the colour of the head there. So that one's a little bit more of a tan kind of colour, this one's slightly lighter, creamier colour. On the nose, the original has a lovely rich chocolatey, mainly chocolate, but some kind of coffee notes in there as well, maybe a little bit of dark fruit. And on this one, similar kind of roasty malt aromas going on, maybe not quite as intense an aroma on the clone. Which one should we try first? Let's do my version. So yeah, like I said, I'm really happy with this beer. It's just really smooth, rich, kind of chocolatey flavour from it. Bit of coffee. There is roastiness, but it's quite mellow, so it's not too harsh, which I did worry a little bit about with the just the quantity of kind of roast, the chocolate malt that's in the recipe. Finishes a little bit more bitter, so initially it's quite sweet, a little bit of bitterness, and you get a nice kind of grainy flavour towards the end. Hops, you don't really get much of the hop flavour through with this, but although it's fairly well hopped for a dark beer, there's not a huge amount kind of late on. And now the original. So as I said at the beginning, this is one of my favourite beers, certainly porters. Yeah, there's quite a there's quite a difference there. I mean, there's a lot of similarities, but there's a flavour coming off of this one that I'm not quite getting in my clone. It's kind of the same thing that I've got on the aroma. So there's a kind of like a fruity thing going on there. Maybe kind of dark berry type flavours. Perhaps a little bit more coffee coming through this as well, which is kind of interesting actually, because it's almost the sort of flavour that I would have expected to have got from using an English ale yeast as opposed to the California one, but it's in the original rather than my one. So my one kind of tastes almost a little bit cleaner, not in a bad way, or an off taste kind of way. I mean, just this one almost tastes more like it's got kind of yeasty esters in it. Yeah, so as far as the comparison goes, it's really good. It's definitely along the lines of this, but there's something between the two which is quite distinct, I think. Now I don't know whether it's down to the yeast, and this one I didn't actually use the yeast that was on the original clone recipe. As I said, I used the Whitbread ale yeast, or A01 Imperial. This one, there's just a slightly more complex flavour to it. Now it's had a lot longer to age as well, so that might be partly down to it, but it's one of those where it's really difficult to put your finger on exactly what it is. That said, I would thoroughly recommend this recipe. It's very nice, and it certainly gives you a good starting point for zeroing in on you know, the Founder's Porter kind of recipe or style if you want to do that. As with all clone beers, I'll always say I usually treat them more as a tribute rather than trying to get a identical clone, because you're on a kind of hiding to nothing really when you're doing that. It's really difficult to, you know, nail a beer, commercial beer, bang on, because of all the differences in process, technique, ingredients, location, water, so on and so forth. But it's a fun thing to do anyway. I'd still like doing the clone brews just to you know, see if you can get anywhere close, or even come up with something that you prefer in the end. So yeah, give it a go. Cheers.
I'm the dude, so that's what you call me, you know? That or his dudeness, or Duder, or you know, El Duderino.